Hello, good morning, good
Good
afternoon, good
morning.
evening, depending where you are. Welcome back, Cheryl. Today it is our last conversation, guided by this wonderful book of Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep.
In,
And we were also reflecting about the bits that we have learned ourselves doing this together, compared to when we read it individually, so to speak, and we all know that if you go back into a topic, there's like an onion, right? You're peeling different layers. So
correct.
today we're kind of closing this journey, and so we are going to discuss about the final bits in part 4 in the book, which are pills versus therapy, and
Mm-hmm.
also yeah, sleep and society. And at the end we'll spend some time on, taking some steps through the summary, and going back and remembering that. For I'm not
Yeah,
going to say what were our previous session. And for anyone watching us, um, please, as usual, share your comments, experience, or questions in via the comments wherever you are watching us, whether it is Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. And if we can get to them in our conversation, we will. And if not, for sure, we will come back at the end.
definitely. Well, thank you again for this warm welcome, Alina. It's great to be here together on this. It's going to be a summer day here in the Netherlands, and
Unusual, I would say, for June. 30
very,
degrees, I think. We're having 30
very
degrees.
unusual.
Yes.
And my mom has been visiting me for almost over a month, so I don't think she's ever seen this kind of weather ever since she's she's visited us for holidays.
Yes.
So it's really nice and warm. And yeah, I also feel a little bit sad because we're closing this book, as you mentioned, this journey on going through why we sleep with Matthew Walker. And yeah, I just hope that these sessions have provided, some inspiration, awareness, maybe some insights with regards to how are you sleeping? Do you feel well rested or not? What you can do if you don't feel um, well rested? And yeah, a
And more
great step
knowledge.
from moving from here. Yeah.
Yes, and more knowledge about the mechanics maybe of sleep, as much as it is. I'm certain that since Matthew Walker wrote the book, there has been probably more developments, and who
Mhm.
knows? I mean, Cheryl might share the next book that we do
Ooh,
together. We said that over the summer we're going to take the time to think
yes.
in which direction, what would be helpful, beneficial. And I see we have some people joining us. Hi, Denzel. Hi, Narcissa. Thank you for being with us today. And so we're going to, I think, let's just jump in, because, as I said,
Mm,
we'll go to the summary and we'll walk a little bit through the entire book. So today
correct.
it is, what are we talking today, Cheryl?
Can you repeat the last question? Because it froze briefly.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening with the internet. It might be a little bit overheated, because I see that it is where I see you a little bit slower from time to time and you
E-
see me a little bit slower. So, well, we're not asleep, but it is,
Exactly.
yes,
It's also going into summer mode, I guess.
yes,
But
indeed, slowing down.
we're slowing down, and everybody, indeed, thank you for the patience if indeed the image freezes a bit here or there. But we will have our conversation.
Yes.
Um, so yeah,
So
maybe
my
we can already
question,
start.
my question was, what are we talking today and where are we starting?
Exactly. So we actually split up part four into two parts. So last time we went into talking about the most common sleep disorders and sleep stoppers that either prevent us or do not really help us to have restorative or sufficient sleep. And to start off this conversation, we will go into the second part of part four of the part called pills, not pills, but sleeping pills, from sleeping pills to a transformed society. And after we talk about sleeping pills versus therapy, sleep and society, we will have a brief recap of all the other parts that we have discussed so far, talking about what is sleep, why we sleep, dreaming, um, yeah, and what determines good quality sleep.
Fantastic. So, should we jump in into the? I think we wanted to start a little bit with looking into how good are the sleeping pills? Because we know that a lot of people, I mean, they are prescribed. It is for different ages, actually. Unfortunately, sometimes we see it also prescribed with children.
Mm.
We are not
Mm.
doctors. We remind this is not a medical opinion. It is based also a little bit on what the book is saying about this. So, yes, take it as a food for thought. That is the
Exactly.
idea.
And maybe
So,
something to also mention is if you are on sleeping pills for whatever reason or for whatever condition you might have, if you want to limit this or get rid of this, please always do this with your doctor, your medical professional, and to not do this entirely by yourself, because there can be quite some consequences of, for example, stopping just abruptly. So guidance in there should definitely be advised.
so where would you say it is the beginning in this conversation? Where would you like to
Mm,
start?
I would like to start off with the common thought that with taking sleeping pills, uh, people have the feeling that they are asleep. But when you look at what actually happens on a neurological level, to say that you are awake is not the case. But to say that you are in a natural sleep is also false. So it's kind of somewhere in between. And why I'm saying this is because I have had conversations where people are on sleep medications and that they really and I'm not trying to demise whatever the reason is why people go on these medications, but they are not getting the natural sleep that you would normally have. But what it helps with is, for example, when you have a racing mind or anxious thoughts, you just can't stop it. Sometimes that can be recommended to really get you out of that roller coaster, so to say. So, what actually happens is with sleeping pills or the induced sleep from this, it kind of targets the same brain region as alcohol would. And they are medically considered as a sedative. So, what you get is that you get this induced sleep, so to say, but it does not generate the same long, deep waves that you, for example, would be seeing in natural non REM sleep. Um, and something else that I would like to mention is that it effectively knocks out that higher region of your brain, so to say, which is why it kind of, yeah, it you can really see those. If you would be put under these electrodes to check how those waves go, you would see a far less, yeah, deeply waves as you would see in what we have actually mentioned in one of our first conversations. So, yeah, just to compare natural sleep versus sleep induced by these modern pills, there are quite some things to be noted. One is that what I mentioned already about the brainwaves being quite different, the quality of it being far less because that electrical signature is just lacking in quality. And it has many side effects. You do hear a lot of people that are on these medications that they experience the next day, they experience daytime drowsiness, feeling less concentration, their motor skills being less reactive, less responsive. I believe one thing that they also advise or warn against is if you are on this to be very careful or perhaps even to not drive, for example. Um, so these things could be as a consequence. One thing is also that if you stop with these medications, you could experience what they call rebound insomnia. And that being that after you stop, you actually feel far worse than when you actually started the medications to get rid of, for example, insomnia. So that what you sometimes see is that those patients tend to restart with the medication, and then you kind of get into this whole negative loop, so to say, trying to get rid of it, stopping, but then having the worse effects than when you started off. So then you try it again, and it therefore becoming such a such a loop, so to say. Another thing that I got out of the theory is that the risk of mortality, of diseases, etc., are way higher compared to when you do not use sleep medications. And what shocked me the most is that even with a small number of pills, um, the effect is still, or the risk of getting there is still, I think, from the top of my head, 3 to 4 times as much than somebody who would not be taking these sleeping pill medications. So quite disturbing. And what are a lot or not a lot of pills? In the graph that is described in the book, it mentioned, I think it was a couple of pills on up to 18 on a yearly basis. So that's not even once a week we're talking about.
Yeah,
So
I'm looking now at the graph, and indeed it is so an increase in risk of death from sleeping pills. If you take from a half to, so it's increasing almost 4 times between half a
exactly,
pill and 18 pills uh, used per year. So it isn't, so it's quite
completely,
amazing. It is for like the duration, it's a span of a year, and then it increases by a 5.5 times if it is more than 132 sleeping pills
correct.
used per year. And I think,
Indeed,
I mean, what we want, these are like scientific studies that have been done. And for anybody who, this is like something that catches their attention, we warmly invite them to, read the book, because there are much more details about this study. And I'm certain that you can also, there's a reference for links at the end of the book. So, in case you want to deep dive into this topic and learn more about it, the book offers you this possibility.
correct. And one of the causes that they mention that kind of explains why there is a higher risk to these diseases mortality is because it increases the risk of infection. And why is that? It's because, or one of the reasons, it is because you do not get as much restorative sleep as you would get in natural sleep. And restorative meaning that it helps the beneficial immune system to be tuned in. Yeah,
Indeed, so the type of sleep or the quality or the what is happening with the body
exactly.
during sleep, it is very different during a natural sleep, right? So all of those domino effects, all of those processes that are set in motion
Hmm.
naturally by different transmitters and also hormones
Correct.
and things like that. When you have a pill induced sleep, some of them they do not occur, which means some systems they do not get triggered, which means that what is happening, that regenerating maybe of cells or over the night, and all those processes, they do not occur. Hence your body, it is less prepared in terms of meeting it just comes in my mind like an army.
Mhm.
Your army is not ready, so then you get.
Actually, it's not. Besides that, it's not even ready. It's not being instructed to, to get prepared or to increase in numbers to be fighting any infections or bacteria that might be um, endangering, your body and physical state. Yeah.
So I think what after pointing out of all of these elements, one
Mhm.
important thing is that it is very easy to go and think that medical authority, whether it's a doctor or somebody prescribing you, or sometimes some of them are
Yeah.
over the counter, depending on the regulation in
Correct.
each
Country.
country.
Yeah.
Um, Nevertheless, most of the times we do not spend time in reading the small print, and we think that that is one in I don't know how many millions to occur, but actually it isn't. And what we want to do with this conversation, it is for you to be aware. We are not saying that this medication is bad. Sometimes it might be needed or required.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I would say always keep yourself informed, always have a proactive attitude, and when you go and discuss, besides
Mhm.
taking the prescription from the doctor, do talk about the consequence on your body and actually the interaction, or how is this going to interfere with the natural circadian rhythm, natural processes in my body. And if the
Yeah.
doctor cannot say or cannot, just go and read and try to find out and empower
Mhm.
yourself with knowledge and information and make an informed
Yeah.
decision. I think that is what we're saying.
Indeed. And I would like to add something to that. I happened to see this program yesterday. It was on Wednesday, but I happened to watch it yesterday. And the title was, I think the title was how we sleep badly or more badly. And there were a couple of people invited, and I remember these two ladies, one having this hypersomniac disorder, and the other lady having narcolepsy, and both really mentioned how without sleep medication they would just not be able to function in the real world. So what we have been mentioning so far is for the average people who might have needed it on occasion or on a temporary basis. But indeed, if you do have a medical condition or disorder, uh, it might be the only way out to be able to deal with having a working life, having your social interactions, and to be able to really monitor where is my energy going to or not. Yeah.
But there is an invitation there about not taking the short route, because
Yeah.
many times, and again, it isn't about a pro or against the pills,
Hmm.
as you say.
Yeah.
It is about being informed, but it is also about, am I willing to put in the
Hmm.
effort to take care of my body, in the sense that this body, carries the mind, and the mind says, oh, and I want to achieve this, and I want to be this, and I need to earn the money, and I need to do all of
Yeah.
this. But it is also about how much time do we dedicate or learn about things,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
give the body what it needs, but not in the sense of a pill, but in the sense of behavioral changes or information or good food or adjustments or
Yeah.
prioritizing ourselves.
Indeed. And something else to really also then try to find out what is the reason why you're not sleeping well. I think it really starts there, because if we're talking about maybe sleep medications on one hand, reaching out for supplements, the herbal teas, etc. They can all be, very helpful in trying to get relaxed and getting into that state which will prepare us better for a good night's sleep. But if we do not find out what the core is of the problem, then we're basically only dealing
Dealing
with
with the symptoms, not with the causes, right?
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're not, or fulfilling the needs ultimately. So we do not address the needs and
Mhm.
see what is happening there in a systemic to the
Yeah,
root cause, as you say, but we actually only take care of the symptoms.
exactly. And perhaps maybe another thing is, we I also feel like we are in a society, this modern society, where we want instant gratification, or an ailment or a problem to be fixed or dealt with as soon as possible. And if we're talking about behaviors, or if we're talking about patterns, these are things that will need time um, to get to the surface, to tackle, to deal with, and to basically retrain, reframe, in order to have more helpful and more, yeah, um,
Well, a better balance, I would say, of a more
yeah,
well-being, so what is
exactly.
a state of well-being. And
Correct.
so I think what we're saying here, it like everything, it requires an exchange. So if we want to see a change for the better for ourselves, what are we willing to commit? What are we willing to
Hmm.
invest other than our money in buying a
Yeah,
pill or just a short appointment? Um,
exactly.
and so it is, I think that's the thing that we want to live, because I think you're right, in these days, that is everything, it's on fast forward speed 6 or 7. We think, oh, I don't have time for this, or I don't have time for that, and
Hmm.
we tend to take shortcuts, or we look for shortcuts. And of course everybody is out there to sell you a shortcut. But look, shortcuts, they also come, I mean, as everything, it pluses and minuses. And sometimes we do not know, or we're not aware about the minuses, and sometimes those minuses are long-term minuses. So the wins are short-term wins, and the minuses are long-term minuses. And I think this is where me and Cheryl are hinting with this. With
Hmm.
taking really responsibility for your own lives, because of course the doctor, the therapist, the physiotherapist, the sleep coach, the well-being industry is there to provide you with different services, but you
Yeah.
drive your own car and you decide for yourself. And it's ultimately you entrusting, just giving it to a specialist, any type of specialist, you kind of give your power away. And I think that this was the entire purpose of this conversation, because information, it is um,
Exactly.
fostering awareness. So we bring things into awareness, and
Yeah.
it invites for taking responsibility for this.
Exactly. Indeed.
Yes, and now,
And
yeah,
yeah, like
if
I
you want to
actually
add anything to this topic, or we want to talk
Um,
about
not, not specifically about the sleeping pills, but I did already mention, the patterns, the sleeping habits that might be restricting people from getting to that good sleeping. Which brings us basically to the next topic of therapy and how cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the most uh, well accepted methods to deal with specifically insomnia and chronic insomnia. Um, and there, together with a therapist or a sleep professional, patients receive or are provided um, tools, methods to deal with
but
coming
yeah.
to the surface. These habits that might be restricting them, um, but also a daily rhythm, looking at how thoughts could be restricting them from having what you would like in order to go to have that space to be able to get prepared for sleep. So many ways within this um, type of therapy of how patients get tools and get retraining, reframing, and basically learning a different relationship with sleep in order to overcome or to combat yeah the condition.
Yes, and what I wanted to mention, of course, there is also the cognitive behavioral model, let's say. Why am I
Hmm.
saying model? I think it started in therapy, but it is very much used in coaching as well. And
Definitely.
we mentioned before maybe that the therapy, it's more oriented towards the past and looking at the root causes, while the coaching, it is much more in the present and towards the future, and it is towards action. It's more proactive. And I would say that the and it is focusing on the functioning, the coaching and the therapy, it's more functioning,
Hmm.
focusing on the symptoms and the diagnostic. Yeah, so just very very short. And while it's called the cognitive behavioral, actually, so it is tapping on the fact that there is a connection between our thoughts. We create our reality. We decide how to act based on the way
Hmm.
we think about something. And I
Exactly.
think in recent years, the feelings also, so that disconnection, that thought creates feelings, feelings create behaviors. And then repetitive thoughts get us, as you say, into patterns. And actually, they
Hmm.
get solidified beliefs. And these beliefs can be, pervasive, generalized, and they are towards self, towards others, and towards the world. And all of these beliefs,
Yeah.
based on this, they kind of define our decisions when it comes also to sleep. And we were talking about that. One of the beliefs that I heard, including from my mother-in-law,
Yeah.
was that older people, she's 73, older people, they sleep 4 or 5 hours at night. This is, you get old, you sleep less. And actually, science does not support that. So this might be
Mhm.
something that you have seen around you, but that doesn't mean to say where you are raised. Or And many times we do not question this. Is this really true? Is this really
Exactly.
true, and is it
Yeah.
helpful? And I guess, without going necessarily into the
Mhm.
cognitive behavioral model, an approach, just
Yeah.
know that you have an area of professional, and this is evidence-based approach, meaning that it is proven scientifically to work, and it's
Indeed.
with sleep and all sorts of other, let's say, addictions and other things. So just
Exactly.
know that help is there, and it's not nothing medication. It will involve an effort, of course, and it does take time, but you can
Definitely.
do it.
I couldn't have said it better, Alina. So yeah, that's the part on therapy, and we also wanted to share the 12 tips that have been mentioned in the end of the book, because those are also things that are included to be mindful of when it comes to looking at sleep hygiene, having a consistent sleep and wake schedule, and so forth. And we will be sharing this in the comments afterwards. But I'm
I'm
really like,
curious if I'm just curious if you want to do it now, or do you want to discuss first about the sleep in society and then we go to
I was
sleep?
realizing that it's because some of these tips are also included in the therapy, which is why I mentioned it, so that we make sure that we don't forget it. But let's indeed dive into sleep and society. What is something that you take away from that, Alina?
Well, I think for the sleep and society, as we said also in the anchor that we put for this message, the book addresses mostly education and healthcare.
Correct.
And I think for education, I think this the quality of sleep, I think it is a reference, but it is also it's looking on the fact that in education we've created these systems where we have the children waking up very early, school
Mhm.
starting pending. I mean, even if I look around myself or friends or different countries, my kids start 8:45, 8:20. I've
Mhm.
started in Romania at 8, but I also have friends that in Germany that they start at 7:45. And then when you add that and you put the distance, from maybe from some children, because in a main city it's one thing, but even there you have long queues, traffic and stuff like that, and you can be on the road either walking or driving or being in a bus,
Yeah.
somewhere to half an hour, 45 minutes to get to a school. And then if you have a start of a school at 7:45, what does
Yeah.
that mean? You leave home by 7, and then in order to do that you needed to wake up at 6:30 and maybe sometimes at 6, and then you have children. And this is how does that connect with one? I think the circadian rhythm and the fact that some of us are night owls, and actually we function better when we wake up naturally
Mhm.
more like between 8 and 9, and we go to sleep
Mhm.
later. It's all good for what was it, the morning larks? I think it was the morning
The
larks,
morning larks are most in sync with
the early
the
birds. Yes, they're with the society, the way society
the way
does.
society kind of is indeed in.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So then it has an impact, I mean, in this thing with the education and how it's organized
Yeah.
with it, how is this interfering with development, right? So the sleep is so important in learning, in memory, in
Exactly.
thriving in education, in immunity system, because when I think up to 7 you are building up, or up to 12 you're building up your immunity system your entire life. So then in that, there are some connection where it seems that the society didn't necessarily follow the lead of nature in that
Yeah.
sense. And there is a
Indeed.
space there to discuss about this aspect. And what did you wanted to add on when on this aspect of the
Hmm.
education?
Well, what I took out of it is how perhaps we need to, you know, discussions need to be with governments, schools, parents, teachers, if it would not be more beneficial to have later start times. And especially when you look at teenagers that already biologically have a more delayed sleep pattern. Um, every day, especially during the week, we are, or society is depriving them from their well needed sleep. And yes, I would say screen time also has added to shortening the duration of getting that window of sleep, and what we all do on these screens, but knowing biologically how this is a given with this, with the teens. Um, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could change that in such a way that we give them more space and more, literally more time to be getting that quality of sleep, and hence increasing their performance, their productivity, their creativity, yeah, and therefore also increasing their chances of when they do start working and building up that part of life, that they have more, yeah, how do you say that, chance to succeed.
Yes, and I think it is very interesting how we are building patterns if you think about it, because ever since as a child, the society tells them, it doesn't matter when you want to wake up. Don't listen to your body. Don't listen to your body if you're
Mhm.
sleepy. No, you have homework. You need to finish in a certain
Yeah.
society. You can't finish before going to sleep. Or yes, I know you are tired, but you need to wake up. You need to wake up, and you have
Hmm.
to do it. You have to do it. So this is a recipe for anxiety later on,
Hmm.
because we create these beliefs where must is in the lead, and where
Yeah.
everything else outside of yourself is dictating and then we're asking, why are we disconnecting? Why are we able to, I don't know, go to sleep when our body tells us so, and we're unable to
Hmm.
recognize the signals that the body is. So there is a
Yeah.
disconnect between
Correct.
somehow the mind, and the entire body into its own functioning. So it is
Exactly.
something there to be. There is no judgment, but it is
Yeah.
something, an invitation to look on how we can
Who, how,
work,
indeed. And it, unfortunately, it's not for us to resolve, but it's definitely something to be mindful of.
contribute.
I mean, for me, um, when I will be checking high schools for my daughter, I will be checking out, what's the earliest starting times. I mean, I won't be determining it only based on that, but it will definitely be one of the things that I will be having on my checklist, so to say. Another thing that I would like to mention is that, unfortunately, looking at what time parents start with work, um, there might also be a change needed there, if they are, taking care of their kids getting to school. Um, but that I believe would be maybe more relevant for society in America, maybe than it would be here, since a lot of our kids are cycling, for example, to school. But yeah, definitely things to
You mean
ponder upon.
cycling in Netherlands, because in Romania you don't have the infrastructure
How do
unless you are in
how
a
do they go to
rural
school in
space.
Romania?
Unless you are in a rural space, and then, well,
Mm.
the cow and the car and the carriage, everybody is sharing the road. Therefore, if you have a bike, you're lucky, and you do
Exactly.
get there, and you do actually, you're
You know,
you're very
I come
lucky
from
if you have a bike.
exactly. Well, and one other factor that plays a role that I'm just thinking about is when I was going to high school in Suriname, we started at 7 in the morning. Can you imagine? I think we had a started. I woke up around 5:30, 5:45, but we didn't have any air conditioning in school. So it was only natural because Suriname is a tropical country. So you can imagine the heat building up during the day. And we were just not learning sufficiently anymore after, afternoon. So the earlier we would start, the fresher we would kind of feel. But it is completely, yeah, yeah, almost opposite if you look at what especially the teenagers would be needing.
Yes. Well, so
Yeah,
there's some food for thought. I think it is for the site and the system, but also obviously for the parents to take
and
an informed and educated decision about this whenever it is possible. And of
correct.
course, in countries where homeschooling is possible, that's also an option that really allows for space and everything. It does take a lot on the parents and
Yeah.
having a system on that, but we leave it there. Now, of course, we were looking also at the healthcare, and there, where do you want to start? I realized that, what did I say? We're already 40 minutes into,
Yeah.
so
Well,
is
there's
this,
one thing that I would like to say there
yeah?
is that how would you feel if you need surgery and your doctor or specialist is sleep deprived? Because when you look at the numbers and you look at the information of the different research that has been done, the hours that residents and um doctors, medical professionals work uh, tend to go beyond the regular norms that we are used to, and really bringing them up to these challenges of having to work, perform under pretty extreme conditions, especially if you look at sometimes hearing about these two, maybe sometimes three shifts after each other. And we've discussed in previous conversations what happens, having not had sleep after already, I think, 16 hours, you cognitively um, become way less able.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just food for thought that if you would be going under such a medical, but even a conversation with your doctor or specialist, how well will the information you will be receiving uh, will be sound. So yeah, that's kind of something to note there on healthcare in general.
Right. So indeed, I think it's also there. There is something to be looked at. And in saying that, I think even in the training, the doctors, I'm not sure how much they study about this topic of the sleep, the importance of sleep. Just recently, if I look, it doesn't matter because it isn't on
Hmm.
the person, it is a system. But just to give an example, again with my mom-in-law,
Hmm.
and having a friend who's a pneumologist. So, and usually the sleep get the sleep problems get studied by pneumologists, and who are specialized in
Hmm.
sleep, and she did some investigation, found out she has sleep apnea, and it's not severe, but it's not small either. And then she went to see a cardiologist. And my friend, who's a pneumologist, she said, "Well, ask her to take," because she did some investigation in Belgium and then went to Romania, and was like, "Did she take the results? And did she inform the cardiologist about the fact that she has sleep apnea and all of it?" And yeah, my mother-in-law said, "Well, I've informed her, but yeah, she looked at it and she didn't really know what to do with this." And the other doctor was like, "What? I mean, so you have here the specialist, working with sleep and being aware and all of those things,
Mm.
and the other one, the other specialist." And
Yeah,
you realize that, look, I mean, doctors also humans, and
indeed.
the way the Western medicine is organized, it is because it's looking at the body. Of course, they do residency, and it is we have the most respect for everybody who's in there to
In
be a
that
doctor, because it takes
in that field.
many years to learn and study. But nevertheless, you reach to a point where you kind of, I'm focusing only on this, or I'm focusing only on this, and sometimes we forget to look at the body
The
as
whole
a
picture.
whole.
Yeah.
Yes, and there isn't really like a case manager, which is like this doctor actually keeps track of the one that the cardiologist, the urologist, the neurologist, and everybody. And I know that there's ways, but that there a space for doctors to learn more about this connection, maybe with the natural rhythm, with
Hmm.
about sleep, about nutrition.
Yeah.
So it is just one does not exclude the other. They actually go together.
Which is
And
also why they start off with a very general education so that they all have pretty much the
the
same
basis,
base to
yes,
start off from. But
yes.
indeed, once they start specializing, it becomes more, yeah, more focused, more specific. Yeah, indeed.
Yes. So those are some of the things. So next time, if you're scheduled for surgery, or if you go for somebody that you know wants to do something more major, or you have no control over anything, just check with them how much sleep that they have, and if they look tired,
Yeah,
you know just take an informed decision. That's what we are saying, because sometimes when we are committed to others, and to the profession, and we forget to take care of ourselves, and that can have, but unfortunately it can have an impact not only on the person who's providing the help, but also on the person who is seeking help. And I think
definitely. Yeah,
that's what we want to mention
indeed.
now. This completes the part four.
Yeah,
Of course, there
yeah,
were other aspects there and some suggestion, I think, which we didn't touch upon. There's an entire subchapter, I think, dedicated to the factor possibilities and how
mhm,
data can help, with tracking. I mean, if we talk about this smartphones and smartwatches that are checking, the quality of sleep or how many hours, and maybe
mhm,
many of you are using it. And we can put, actually, we were looking yesterday, when we are talking, and I found like an article of somebody who was doing an analysis for
mhm.
for themselves, and it can be as an example on how you use it. We do not say yay or nay. You are, again, driving your
Yeah,
own car through life and make your own decisions. And in case you want to see it, we said, well, that can be a resource, and I'll put it here in
indeed.
the, while you maybe start with taking us back, because we've reached to that point of summary. So we have
Well,
about 14 minutes to do that.
that's going to be a way fast one to go about. Okay, so which things have we talked about? We talked about you know, part one being this thing called sleep, and how it mentions, or what I take away from that is that the shorter you sleep, the shorter the lifespan will be, and how sleep is the most effective thing that we can do for our brain and body health, to reset this each day. Um, what did we discuss about the two main factors determining wake and sleep? If you perhaps can remember, we talked about the circadian rhythm, we talked about sleep pressure. If I summarize the circadian rhythm quickly, you know, it regulates the time. Um, no, sorry, that doesn't regulate time. It's melatonin that regulates the time, but how your circadian rhythm actually is like a, almost like a 24-hour internal clock, and determining all these processes in your body, in your brain, to be functioning as they should. Um, and melatonin, which is related to this, is a hormone that helps to, that is kind of regulated to do the timing of when getting prepared to sleep. And that is being done by the influence of darkness. And then we have sleep pressure, where the chemical adenosine is being built up from the moment that we wake up, and this sleep pressure is built up during the day, which then at a certain point also is at this threshold of where you really feel like you need to go to sleep and want to go to sleep. So these two factors are good to remember when looking at, um, if you want to influence how well you sleep, to be looking at these two. Another thing that might be interesting to recap is, how do I identify a sleep deficiency? And the book mentions three questions that might be helpful to remember. One, would you wake up on time if you do not set your alarm? Second, do you find yourself rereading things? And I also remember from from when I was employed, of when you have these nights that you haven't slept well, and it's like you're trying to read things, and the information is just not getting in. So that might definitely be one symptom. Another one being, how well are you able to function and even optimally function before noon without caffeine? Because caffeine, as you might know, is targeting the receptors that actually adenosine, the chemical of sleep pressure, targets, so to say, which basically brings down the sleep pressure. So you will be then getting sleepy at a much later time.
So
So
you're
okay,
pretty much hijacking those sensors and you're
literally
saying,
hijacking.
"Don't look here, don't look here. No, 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 you don't look here." So it's kind of disconnecting that feedback loop that the adenosine gives
Indeed,
to the sensors. So it isn't that your body is not tired; it is that just the
it's
sensors
masking it,
are looking the other way.
and
So
it's basically masking it as
yes,
such. Correct. I think that that would be a good term to use. And the other day, I actually heard a very good uh, remark that could also maybe be added to this list of questions. Um, how nice are you perceived by the people in your surroundings? Because can you imagine your irritability increasing as well because of having a lack of sleep? So that might also be an interesting one
the
to
feedback
ask.
loop, right?
The feedback loop from both people and the chemicals. Indeed.
Yes.
And
I
then
find these questions are really helpful. And after we
yeah,
finish, maybe you can leave them in the comments
hmm,
of the
good one.
because I think that will be really really helpful to have some
Correct.
questions to keep in our mind and help us.
Indeed, because I do still have that kind of self-assessment questionnaire, and they are already included in there, but
Mhm.
that should be fine. So include questions. Yep, great.
This is how we do it. We do it live. We have 8 minutes to go up to our
Fantastic.
hour to the top. Yes. What is important? What else is important
Hmm.
to mention?
So
I think maybe the difference between sleepy and tired.
that might also be a nice one to mention. So sleepy is, like I mentioned, the sleep pressure building up, and you really feel like you're starting to yawn and starting to blink, or your eyes becoming tired. Those physical reactions you would normally feel with that, and that is because that sleep pressure is building up until you really need to go to bed. Whereas with tired, it's kind of a lack of energy that you feel, and lack of energy showing mentally, physically, perhaps emotionally, that makes you feel uh, like, yeah, being less productive, not feeling like you want to initiate things or feel creative, um, and that you do need to take some relaxing time or rest. But a lot of people confuse these two. Um, and then it could be that when you go to bed tired, that you do not fall asleep because you're perhaps not sleepy enough. So hopefully that brings a bit more light while recapping this. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okie doke.
Another thing that might be useful because we didn't necessarily we just I think it's what we find it's very
Yeah.
important.
Indeed. There is something about information processing that I would like to share, perhaps, that
Yes.
could be helpful. Is that when you talk about um, the state, the waking state, you can almost see that as when it comes to information processing, that you can see it as the state of reception. So when you experience and when you constantly learn the world around you. Non-REM sleep can be seen as reflection. Reflection being where all the raw ingredients of the information that you've gathered during the waking state, they they are stored and strengthened during this phase of sleep. And then the third being the the dreaming sleep. The REM sleep can be seen as an integration of these raw ingredients of data and information being intertwined together and cemented. Might be a good way to describe that. Yeah,
That and this is also a possibility. Now you went through this sleep cycle, right? So and actually,
a little bit. Yeah,
uh, yeah, and then the connection between duration and quality, maybe it is good because how we had a talk, how do you measure quality of
at
sleep
quantity, we
and
mentioned
quantity?
the
Yeah,
sleep efficiency score,
yeah.
and what does that mean? It basically means that you calculate the time that you spend in bed against the time that you think that you sleep. Because sometimes what you think you sleep doesn't really have to be sleep at all, but it is all about perception and how you experience that. And the higher score you get, so I believe from 85 to 90% is considered having good quality sleep. So can you imagine if you are in bed for 8 hours and you are asleep for 7, then you get a score of 7 divided by 8 is, I don't know, from top of my head, 75%, 80% will be the score. So that is also something worth thinking of when wanting to know how well um, yeah, your sleep efficiency is, and how well the time spent in bed is actually spent on sleeping.
Right. And you mentioned that there is a correlation between the duration of sleep and how many sleep cycles you have, right? Because sleep cycle, it is how long? It's about 60
Yes.
minutes to
So,
90 minutes.
so one sleep cycle is on average between 80 and 100 minutes. So that's why they take the average being
Mhm.
90. And indeed, when you look at what would be indeed also good, a good quality sleep is if you've had about 5 to 6 of these sleep cycles. And if you calculate this back, it kind of comes back to the duration of between 7 to 9 hours that an adult would be needing to sleep. And of course, you always have people that might function perfectly on just 7 hours a night, and others that might really need more towards the 9, maybe even 9.5 hours. So I would like to invite you to experiment with that. And one way is to see until what time do you actually sleep, or until what time do you sleep and wake up naturally for a longer period without having the need to have that alarm. Yeah.
Right, and indeed, and also keep in mind that during the lifespan, this
Hmm.
is varying, right? So from a babies that can have, I think, 30 minutes, at the beginning, or 1 hour, and then the older you get, those are increasing. And then
Indeed.
when you go, there is a change, I think, when you go towards being older, but nevertheless, I think the duration overall does not change. And even if you are older, still it is observed or recommended that it
Mhm.
is needed to have like around 7 to 8 hours of sleep.
Correct. So I think it's above 65, 66 that between 7 to 8 is still recommended. But like you mentioned with your mother-in-law, I think it's also conditioned or indeed maybe culturally determined of what we think our elderly might be needing. And one thing that I could add to that is that they do experience way more fragmented sleep. They tend to be awake more often because sometimes you might be experiencing pain, or they do have less non-REM sleep or not qualitative non-REM sleep. And what you also see is that they tend to have um, more naps or accidental naps during the day, which also add to that duration.
Yes. Well, I mean, this
Yeah.
is a summary. There's been, this thing called sleep, why you should sleep, how and why we dream, and then
Mm,
also the last part, which was about sleep stoppers and, you know,
correct.
um, all of these aspects and sleep disorders and pills versus therapy. I think it's been a very enriching journey for us as well. And we hope that we left you with things that you haven't maybe knew about it, or maybe things that you want to explore more and read
Mhm,
about it.
exactly.
And just yeah, trust your intuition. So take whatever it is needed and then go and find more resources, and just follow your instinct in terms of resources and things like that, and go and expand your knowledge and awareness on this topic. Now, Cheryl, thank you very much for taking this journey with me. We're going over the summer, July, August, we're taking a break. Who knows, September, we might be back. And if we are back, of
Yeah,
course, we'll be more than happy to have you, all of you who are interested in this topic, next to us. And
exactly. And also,
yeah,
if there are still any questions popping up after our conversation now, please do still reach out to us or mention it in the comments later, and we will be answering them.
and as you said, there's going to be that 12
Yeah,
tips, I think, that will be shared as
yeah,
well. So
yeah.
we wish everybody a wonderful summer. We just started with June, yes.
We
And
did.
yes, and we take care of your sleep. And yeah, let's have all a wonderful summer, recharging
Definitely, especially with the sun out there. We'll be charging as much as we can and restoring.
and restoring, indeed. Take care and see you possibly in autumn.
See you, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. Bye bye.